Hi, I'm Matt with Main Street Medina. Welcome to another edition of Medina Minute. Today we're going to sit down and talk with a few friends from around town and learn about their stories and their business. Come on in and join me. Well, today we're here with Tom O'Connell from Habitat for Humanity, Medina County.
Yep.
Tom, thanks so much for joining us today.
No, thanks, Matt, for the opportunity to be here and talk with you today. Yeah.
Sure. I'm curious, are you from Medina or what brought you here?
No, I'm not. Originally, I'm actually from Massachusetts.
I thought there was that little bit of an accent in there.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
I grew up north of Boston,
Okay.
quite a bit north, about 50 minutes north of Boston, in a city called Haverhill. Grew up there. My parents still live in the same home I grew up in.
Cool.
What brought me to Medina County was work.
Yeah.
Grew up, again, north of Boston, went to college in Nyack, New York. That's where I met who's now my wife. Her name's Lori. We went to school there. She's from Ohio. She's from Canal Fulton.
Okay, sure.
So down in the Canton, Akron area. We met there, and I went to school actually to be a pastor.
Really?
So out of high school, it was just kind of that direction, felt like that's what I should do. So I went to a Bible college in New York, in Nyack, New York, graduated from there, and we got married in 2001, June of 2001, and it was a job to pastor a church that brought me here to Medina County.
Okay.
So in July of 2001, we moved to Lodi. So I went from a community of, where I grew up was probably 50, 60,000 people, to Lodi's 5
or 6,000?
5 to 6,000,
yeah.
Depending if you count all the livestock
Right.
there. So it was quite a shift. But I went there to help start a church, actually. So there was a group of about four families, so we made 5 in that community. A number of them had lived in Lodi for a number of years and wanted to see a church started, and they wanted a pastor to come and help kind of get it off the ground. And so fresh out of school, having never done that before, they took a risk on us, my wife and I, and the church. We moved there in July.
So help me understand.
Yeah, sure.
There's a lot to understand.
Yeah, please. That's really...
How do 4 families in Lodi, Ohio get in touch with a college graduate in Nyack?
Nyack College, or Nyack, New York.
Nyack, New York.
Yep.
Like, is there a trade magazine for, pastors wanted? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the college I went to was part of a Christian denomination or tradition called the Christian and Missionary Alliance denomination.
Okay.
So they're across the world. They have a number of churches here in the United States, around 2,000 or so churches here in the United States. Actually, Medina County, there's 4 Christian Missionary Alliance churches. So what happened was, the United States is divided up into regions, where each region has a leader, a district leadership, or region leadership. So what happened was the individual that was in charge of this region, which is called the Central District, put word out to the different colleges across the United States. There was, I think, 4, one being where I was.
Cool.
So periodically at our school, you'd get job postings.
Yeah.
Job in Canton, Ohio, job in, Colorado, job, wherever. So you could look at them and apply.
But for some reason, you liked that note card that said job in Lodi, Ohio.
Well, it was interesting. I honestly, so at the time, again, we're going to school in New York. I had an internship at a church in New Jersey at the time. And it was going really well. And there was actually a thought of we would stay actually in New York, New Jersey area after college, live there, kind of get our feet under us as new couple, new marriage and all that. And but this opportunity presented itself, and we started exploring it like you would do for any job. And we, before we accepted it, we drove out to Lodi. Honestly, I didn't even know where Lodi was on a map.
most people wouldn't.
Yeah, so I had to look it up.
It's a great town. We're not knocking Lodi.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I loved it. I mean,
it's a very cute little place.
I actually really appreciated the community and the, again, I grew up in a pretty big city. So to go from that to where some people, even in my high school, I didn't know all my kids in my high school, to now I go to Lodi and, there's something very beautiful and special about walking into the local grocery store and being known.
Right.
I live now in Brunswick, and I go to the Giant Eagle, Aldi. I might see someone I know, but I see more people I don't know in those places. So to go into Miller Brothers in Lodi, or to go into, at the time there was a little restaurant called the Lighthouse Cafe, and they just know what you want before you even sit down. And there was just something very beautiful and special about that, and the relationships we still have today with people that still live there. And so that's how. So you hear about this job post, you follow up with it, you explore it like any other job, and you just say, okay, they're willing to take a chance on a 21-year-old and 22-year-old who have never pastored a church before in their lives, but they're willing to take a risk on us, so we'll move. And so we moved into a little 2-bedroom apartment. And moved there, and then the church officially started in November of 2001. And we were there just shy of 10 years.
Oh wow! Okay.
So I was the title was senior pastor. We were able to buy a piece of property with a church on it. It was a great experience. Because we again, starting a church, you don't have property, you don't have a building, you don't have any of that. So we met in rental, like middle school cafeteria, different buildings in Lodi. And then we heard of this church kind of on the outskirts of town that was closing, and we met with their leadership, and it was just a beautiful experience of going. It was about 10 or so individuals that had been in that church, been a part of that church for most of their lives. Some of the individuals in the church remember helping dig the foundation with their dads. Oh wow, cool. And they still worshiped there and were there. So it was just this beautiful passing of the baton. They were so excited to see a younger congregation coming in and being a part of it. And actually the last service that they were officially in there or owned it, we actually did together.
That's really neat.
And it was our congregation with their congregation, and just kind of an official passing of the baton. And so then we were there about 10 years, and church is still going. And
that's really cool.
Yeah, so that's what brought us to Medina County. So that was about this summer will be 20 years, but we've been living now in Medina County.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Tom, did you grow up in the faith, or was church a big part of your childhood with your family?
Yeah, that's a great question. So. Yes, my parents came out of a predominantly Catholic background. I think went to serve Mass on the holidays. That was really about it. And they grew up closer to Boston. And after they got married, and I would have been, my sister was 7 and I was about 1. We moved to where I grew up, spent most of my life, and it was in that community that actually, it was a neighbor just down the road who, after my family moved into that home, this neighbor just started being a good neighbor to my mom, and started building a relationship with my mom and welcoming her to the neighborhood, answering questions and all that kind of stuff. And again, my parents went to church, but it's again more holidays. But then that individual, Susan was her name, invited my mom and dad to come to her church, and so my parents started going to that church, and then bringing me and my sisters to that church, and so faith was a major part. I mean, we were there on most Sundays, and really one of the main reasons I felt compelled to pursue being a pastor as it relates to my education and then career was really my youth pastor. So when I was in 7th grade, this church hired a full-time. It was the first time they hired a full-time pastor to work specifically with middle school, high school students, and we spent a lot of time together. We in the normal youth group activities and retreats, but then he took our group overseas, so we got to travel to Dominican Republic and got to experience another culture, and just kind of opened my whole worldview. Leaving the United States, and so really his influence in my life and watching his influence in my friends' lives caused me to think, I'd like to do the same for others. So that's kind of the track record. So that's faith was a huge part of my life growing up, and then pursued the education piece. Yeah.
The trips that you were able to take, were those mission trips? Like, were you going to other communities and help building churches or educating, things like that?
Yeah, so they were. I've had the opportunity to travel a number of times overseas, Dominican Republic twice.
Yeah.
I've been to Costa Rica a couple times.
Wow, cool.
Went to Israel to visit my wife when we were in college. She was studying abroad for a semester, so I got to travel there during Thanksgiving break and travel the Middle East, and got to have Thanksgiving lunch at the Dead Sea. We shared peanut butter and jelly sandwich at the Dead Sea there.
It's about the bread.
So traveled there, been to Thailand. So in all these trips were a little different, but they were all missions trips, other than the trip to Israel. That was more sightseeing.
Yeah.
But all these other trips were working with, I've been to Peru, just working with a local church or organization to partner with them and what they're doing, and whether it's construction or outreach or just kind of coming alongside them and supporting their programs. So I've had the opportunity to do that a number of times.
You've made an interesting transition from being the pastor of a church and leading a congregation to now leading Habitat for Humanity in Medina.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of crossover between your faith and your mentoring and your spirituality and what you do.
Yeah.
Tell me, if you would, a little bit about that change to becoming part of Habitat and why you made that change and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, appreciate the question. So again, I was at the church in Lodi for about 10 years, and then I had another job opportunity to move up to Brunswick to be a pastor of a larger congregation called Hope Church in Brunswick. And so accepted that opportunity, that job opportunity. So Lori and I and our 4 kids moved from Lodi to Brunswick in 2011. Joined the pastoral team there. There was 3 of us on staff. And that was going really well. I was there for about 7 years. And the last 2 years, I did different things there, different jobs there. But the last 2 years I was there, I was the senior pastor. So overseeing the church and leadership. That last year I was there, just kind of was doing some soul searching, honestly.
Sure.
Was exploring, really questioning probably for the first time in my adult life the things I believed. You know, a lot of it had to do with things that went on in my life. A lot of it had to do with things going on in our world that caused me to kind of just look at church, my job, you know, and really just kind of, again, doing that soul searching to say, am I really enjoying what I'm doing? Or is it, am I just kind of going through the motions to a degree? And not that, you know, any job has stress, every job has stress, every job has a level of, man, I just don't want to do this, but it's part of my job and I got to do it. But it was beyond that. It was just like,
never have those days.
Yeah, like this is not for me long term. And I had to come down to the decision, like, okay, I could keep doing this, but what is that really going to do to me inside? And I just kind of hit a point where I just said, you know, I don't think this is good for me from like a emotionally healthy, mentally healthy, physically healthy perspective. And that scared me to death because I'm a bit of a planner. Like, I like to have kind of know what's coming down the road and okay, as I thought about, okay, if I'm going to make a change, I had to really reconcile my career up until then had all been in pastoral ministry. My education, my undergrad and graduate work was all kind of related to church work. I had never done really anything else in my adult life. So the big question is, I have a family of, I have a wife and I have 4 kids that we have bills and we have things we have to take care of. So what do I do? And that question was in some degree paralyzing. But it just kind of came to a point where I just said, okay, I have to make a change. And I know it's going to be scary. I know there's a lot of unknown, but I did. So I submitted my resignation in the fall of 2018 to the church. It wasn't an immediate resignation. It was a resignation, finishing about 2-3 months later. But I didn't have a plan B. I didn't know what
scary.
I didn't know what plan A was, but I knew I had to take that step.
Yeah.
So then it was submitting the resignation, and then it was full on job search. So it's developing a resume. It's so I had a person help me with that. It's starting to get really leverage LinkedIn. It's networking. It's all of that, and it's actually through a Habitat wasn't even on the radar when I resigned.
Okay.
Honestly, I knew Habitat was down here in Medina, but I didn't really know what they were doing. I had really no involvement with them. But it was through a networking meeting that I had with an individual who I didn't realize was on the board of Habitat, that a position open to manage the restore at Habitat. And she let me know about that, and so I submitted my resume and interviewed, and the end of, so it would have been December of 2018, I was hired and began managing the restore. Okay. So that was the step. So yeah, for me, it was questioning a lot of things about faith. I mean, and I'm still, honestly, this has been 2 years now or so, almost 3 years. I've been on this journey. There's a lot of things now that I used to believe pretty strongly that I don't believe, and there's things that I used to not believe that I probably believe more strongly in now, and it's still very in process, and it's great. I mean, I love the journey. I'm reading a lot of books about, seeing, the tradition I was in saw things a certain way, the Bible and God and faith and, a certain way, but now I'm seeing it a lot of different ways. Yeah. And I love that.
So I love kind of the dichotomy of you that, I've had the joy to work with you for several years now. Right. And you are a planner, but at the same time, you have been able to take complete leaps of faith and reinvent yourself. Yeah. Almost, I'm fascinated by immigration. People that leave everything, and came to our country, or you in leaving your career and your path and everything and starting over and then doing that again, but still soul searching. Yeah.
And I love that. Habitat allows me to still do what I'm pretty passionate about. I mean, even going back to my kind of leading into pursuing being a pastor and all of that, like it's really about, the foundation is about helping people. Right. Like that's really what I want to do. What I wanted to do then and I still want to do now is I want to help improve people's lives and in tangible ways, not just offer words, but here's how I can come alongside you and maybe help make your life, your family's life a little better. And that was what I was doing in numerous ways through pastoral ministry, but now, with Habitat, I still get to do that. I mean, I still get to, and it's much more tangible now. I mean, I get to journey with families for 2 to sometimes 3 years to see them come into our program, and then 2.5, 3 years later, on an afternoon, a Sunday afternoon, which is typically when our dedications are, I get to hand them a set of keys and say, this is your home.
What does that feel like to be able to do that?
I mean, it is.
That is.
Yeah, I mean, so it just happened. So we dedicated our 43rd home the first Sunday in December. Yeah. And single mom. She's been on our program for a few years, and I got to meet her kind of towards the end of her journey. I mean, basically from when we started building her house to the end, that's as we got to know each other. But so single mom, 2 daughters, and they had, worked so hard on the program. And one of the things we require is they have to do volunteer hours or sweat equity hours. So it's not Habitat homes aren't just free gifts. It's not you're approved and 2 years later you get a house, and it's, they work for this. I mean, they put in hundreds of hours, and it's not easy. It's actually intentionally not easy. But at the end of this program, 2.5 years later, to be able to hand this mom a set of keys, and then she gets to turn around to her daughters there on that Sunday afternoon and say, we're home.
My friend, I would be a blubbering idiot at that
This
point.
is the first time.
It's beautiful.
Like they will ever. This is the first time they'll own a home.
That they have a home. It's not a house.
It's not a house. It's their home. Like, and and it's not only just about having shelter. Obviously, I think the stability, having stable shelter is life changing. Whether it's a 1-bedroom apartment or a condo or a 3-bedroom house. Stable shelter is life changing for everyone and anyone. So it's not only that, but it's now this family gets to develop wealth. not that they're going to become millionaires. I mean, but I think we all know home ownership is one of the most stable ways to develop wealth in our world. So to be able to do that with them, and that's a key too, is the language. We're not, one of the things we always are trying to talk about within our organization is we're not doing this for people. We are really doing this with them.
Yeah.
Because they are with us from the moment they get in the program to the moment they hand the keys, and then they're paying the mortgage on it. And that we are with these families. They're doing it with us. It's not a free gift to them. It's not a handout. And one of the mantras that we use a lot too is it's not a handout. It's a hand up.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing. And
so you're still pastoring, just in a different way.
Absolutely.
You're helping
it's a whole different look to it, and I love it. I mean, I love what I get to do. It's stretched me. I mean, Habitat on a surface level looks like a pretty simple organization. We build houses or build rehab houses, and we do. That's what we do. But at the same time, we originate the mortgage in-house. We service the mortgage in-house.
Really?
So just like I own a home and I pay my mortgage payment every month, and it's separated between principal and taxes and insurance, and that someone has to do all that.
Right.
I don't do it. Someone has to do all that, and they pay my taxes, they pay my insurance. We do all that in-house.
That's really cool. I had no idea.
Yeah, so we have to do all that. But we have to do it according to the mortgage regulations that the federal government lays out.
Right.
So which are growing with more and more complexity, which is a good thing because we had those issues back in 2008 when everything the housing economy tanked. Yeah, because there was a lot of the regulations weren't good. And so now but we have to follow all those. So you have to have people that know what they're doing to follow. Make sure we're getting out letters on time. Make sure we're servicing correctly, originating, the documents are correct.
Yeah.
Plus we run a retail business,
I was going to ask you about that. So under your leadership, Habitat or Restore.
Correct.
What do you call it? Because
people. Yeah, it's a Restore.
So Restore.
Habitat for Humanity
moved
Restore.
from East Smith over to Lafayette, rehabbed the old Hawkins grocery store.
Correct. Yep.
And you've been open, what?
It'll be a year. We first opened at our new location on Lafayette Road in March of 2020.
And then everything closed.
We did. We had the joy. Man, that first week
we
was
were open for like a week or two.
It was a week, exactly. We opened, I think it was March 13th. It was a Saturday. That was we didn't call it a grand opening. It was just kind of an opening. But it was the biggest, we had the biggest sale day we ever had on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And so many people in the store. And when we moved over there, we decided to be open 3 days a week, which was a big jump from us because when I was hired, even in 2018, it was one day, it was Saturday. And we always heard from people, customers, when are you going to open more days? So we eventually added a half day on a Thursday at East Smith location. And then we moved to Lafayette. We opened 3 days, and we have plans for in the summer to opening more day or another day. But anyway, so that first week we opened 3 days and it was great, and that was an exact time when coronavirus cases were increasing here in Northeast Ohio, specifically Medina County, and we, along with many other businesses, made the difficult choice. Our board made the difficult choice to close, and it was the right choice. We weren't ready we didn't have any of the PPE equipment. We didn't have the shields up at our registers and the cleaning supplies, all that kind of stuff. So we closed for about 2 months. And our brand new store it wasn't empty, it had stuff in it, but
but not people.
We didn't have people. But then come middle of May last year, we, like other businesses, reopened our doors and been going ever since. And
good.
So the heart behind a Restore is it's a revenue generator. Again, our mission is to provide safe, decent, affordable housing for qualified families here in Medina County. It costs a lot of money to build a house.
Absolutely.
Typically it's anywhere from, depending on the location, it could be anywhere from $140,000 to $160,000 between the property, the materials, and all the costs of building a house. So it's not a cheap expense. So obviously we fundraise, we work on house sponsorships, companies, individuals, businesses, organizations, churches that are willing to donate money to build homes.
Right.
But then, we supplement the fundraising with the Restore sales. And so what the Restore does is it generates money for us to then build more homes. And,
so at Restore, people donate items, or companies donate items.
Correct.
You in turn sell those.
Yeah. So it's a building supply store, new and used building supplies. So we get donations from individuals across Medina County. We pick them up, pick up those donations right now 2 to 3 days a week, all across the county. We drive to Brunswick, to Lodi, Seville, Wadsworth, Medina. No charge, and so we do that. So if someone can't get it to our store, a couch, an appliance, a bed set, whatever it might be, we'll come get it, no charge. But then we also get donations from corporations. So Do It Best Hardware has a distribution warehouse here in Medina.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And they have been one of our best partners for a number of years, and regularly. I mean, probably right now it seems almost every other month. They fill our 24-foot box truck with products from their warehouse. So anything from hardware supplies, electrical supplies. A few weeks ago, we got some dog food from them. It was very random, but we got cans of dog food.
That's one of the things I love about shopping at Restore. You truly never know what you're going to find.
Yeah, we got playground slides from them. I mean, so we have a lot of new items that are in the packaging, never been opened, on our sales floor. Yeah.
What's the craziest thing that's ever been donated that you can say in public?
Yeah. Craziest thing.
Or what's something that you're like, I don't even know what to do with this?
Man, that's a great question. What is the craziest thing we've ever had donated?
Or what's made you laugh the most?
So we get a lot of questions. This probably isn't the craziest, but like used toilets.
Okay.
Do
you take them?
We don't.
Okay.
We don't. And there's usually there's some pushback. Like people are like, why won't you take my used toilet? And every now and then I have the courage to ask the follow-up question, would you buy a used toilet? And usually their answer is no way. And I say, well,
there you go.
Yeah. So, and sometimes, those kind of things, because some people know we don't take it, so they'll just show up at our store, like on the curb, and then we have to figure out what to do with it. So those are, I wish I could think of like an item.
No, that's
like,
a good one.
That's out there, but
that's hysterical.
For the most part, we're able to figure out what to do with everything that's donated. And if we can, if it's items that have metals in it that can be scrapped or recycled, we have a team of people that it's pretty tedious work, but they tear those things apart and then we eventually scrap those or recycle those. So we try to limit what goes into a landfill from our store.
Sure.
So,
Well, very cool. Tom, thank you so much for sharing your story and your background. It's been indeed a pleasure learning more about you and your career that brought you here to Medina.
No, thanks, Matt. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.